Hello guys, thanks for joining us. In this video, I'm gonna show you how you would define local analog input points in your SCC 520. So as you can see here, this is the picture of the 520. Up top here, you can see the analog input terminals. They go from analog input 1 all the way to analog input 7. Now, analog input 1 to 4 can be either a digital input or a thermistor type 2 or type 3 10K thermistor sensor. Analog input number 5 can be an RTD sensor, that's a 1000 ohm RTD, or it can also be a digital input sensor or switch. And analog input number 6 and analog input number 7, they are 2 voltage inputs. They can range from 0 to 10 volt DC, measuring 0 to 10 volt DC. So you can tie in sensors that have voltage outputs, and you can scale them as you wish. You can also tie in 4 to 20 milliamp sensors to these 2 inputs. But if you do that, just remember that you have to install a 500 ohm resistor on the externally on the input side. So AI6 and AI7, if you bring in 420 milliamp, just install the 500 resistor in parallel with the terminal at that particular sensor. Okay, so let's move on to the programming environment catalyst. Okay, so this is our backnet integrator software. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have an SCC 520 defined here. I'm going to right click on that and I'm going to launch the Catalyst programming environment. Okay, so now that it's launched, you see it starts with a new page, and where you actually insert the local analog input points is you go under the hardware menu, as you can see on your left side, and you have analog input or digital input. So for the first analog input 1 to analog input 4, as I mentioned, they can be thermistor type or digital input. So let's just give you an example here. So I'm just going to drag an analog input. Automatically, Catalyst by default, it will increment these inputs. You can change the index here if you like to use, for example, analog input 2 instead of 1, and you want to leave analog input 1 empty. You could do that here by incrementing this index here. Okay, but let's leave it as 1. So analog input 1. The way we configure it is we can click on this configure button down here, or you can also get to that configure button using the smart tab here. So they both go to the same place, so it's up to you how you get there. So let me just click here, and this is where I would define what my analog input 1 will be. So I can choose type 3, type 2, or I can give it a custom resistance range if you like. You can do that too. And then you can also choose Fahrenheit or other units like Celsius and stuff like that. So for this video, I'm not going to get into too much of that, but again, I just wanted to show you where this stuff is. So that was for analog input number 1. Let's bring in another input point, but let's bring in a digital input, for example. So digital input, again, automatically it will choose the next available input. So it puts the digital input into number 2, my input number 2. And you can rename this to whatever you want. This is where you would rename them. So I'm just not going to rename them this video. I just want to show you how you configure the points. So this is the digital input, for example. Again, configure. I can click on this. I can configure it as being normally closed, or if it's unchecked, it would be normally open contact. That was for your digital inputs. Let me bring in some other and another analog input. But this one I'm just gonna choose number 5, and the way I do that, input number 5, just go here and I change that index to 5. Okay. When I change that index, as soon as I change that index, you saw that how it puts the RTD option there, because input number 5 can be a 10K RTD. So again, I'm going to click on configure, and here's your choices. You can have a 1K RTD. So you can have a 1K RTD, or you can have custom. Okay. And just to show you, I'm going to delete this block here. You can right click or just hit delete button. I'm going to bring it again. I'm going to bring a digital input as well, and I'm going to change the index again from 3. I'm going to make it a 5. Okay, so that means input number 5. Okay, so now I can click on configure again. It lets me change it to a normally closed. If not, by default, it's a normally open. And again, you have to remember, just in case you do that, just make sure you name it correctly. So this would be BI5 in reality if I wanted to name it that. Or I can give it any name like fan status. Whatever makes sense to you guys. Okay? So that was for the essentially inputs number 1 to 5. We covered that. So let's bring in another input, and I'm just going to rename this, for example, CO2 sensor, and I'm going to make the index to be number 6. So that's my input number 6, and as described to you before, input number 6 can be a voltage input. So I'm going to hit that, and you can see that changes to voltage. And then if I click on configure, I can configure the scaling for the voltage. For example, by default, this is 0 to 5, 2000 ppm. You have other options, or you can do a custom. So whatever you want, you enter it here in this table. And then you can set your units as well, whatever units that you're measuring. If it's humidity, CO2, whatever voltage input you have. And again, same thing applies with the 4 to 20 milliamp. Except, as I mentioned, install that 500 ohm resistor on your input, and then it gets treated as a normal voltage input. Okay? Okay guys, that was a quick video to show you some configuration about the inputs of the 520. We'll make another video for the outputs, and I'll post that soon. If you have any questions, please call us or email us, and we'll be happy to help you. Have a good day.